My son shouted, "Your money is our money now." I smiled and said nothing. That night I transferred everything. The next morning he tried to access the account and froze because what he saw there made him realize he'd just lost everything. Subscribe to the channel, leave your like and comment from which part of the world you are watching. Get comfortable and relax. Let's begin. My hands were folding the linen napkin into a perfect rectangle when his voice cut through the quiet. The good china, the one with the delicate blue rim, felt suddenly heavy in my hands. I set his plate down carefully, the pot roast and carrots arranged just so, the way he liked it when he was a boy. "It's not a discussion, Mom. It's a fact." I took my seat, smoothing the napkin onto my lap. Marcus leaned forward, his elbows on the tablecloth. At 42, he still had the handsomeness of his father, but his eyes had hardened into something impatient. The light from the overhead fixture caught the tension in his jaw. "A fact," I repeated, my voice level. "Yes, look, I've run the numbers. My commission structure is changing. The market's soft. That condo payment is killing me and the Merced's lease is up. I need liquidity." I picked up my fork. "I made the gravy just for you. It's your grandmother's recipe." He waved a hand, dismissing the bowl between us. "This is serious. We need to talk about your finances, your retirement fund, the savings account, the equity in this house." "My finances." I took a bite. The meat was tender, cooked slow for hours. "Our finances," he corrected, his tone leaving no room for argument. "That's what family is, a unit, a team. What's yours is mine, and frankly, Mom, what's mine is, well, it's tied up right now." I looked at him then, really looked. I saw the boy who scraped his knee and wanted only me to fix it. I saw the teenager I worked double shifts to send to a better school. I saw the man who had stopped calling just to talk, who only ever asked, "How are you?" as a formality before stating his needs. The history was all there, layered under the present demand. "I am comfortable," I said. "My needs are met." He laughed, a short, sharp sound. "Your needs? You live in a 4-bedroom house by yourself. You drive a 10-year-old Camry. You buy groceries with coupons. You're sitting on a nest egg you're too scared to use. That's not needs being met. That's hoarding." The word hung in the air, hoarding asterisk. As if my life's careful work, the deliberate choices, the sacrifices tucked away into IRAs and savings bonds, were a pathology. "It's security," I said. "It's selfish." He said it plainly, as if commenting on the weather. "You have a family, I am your family. My struggles are your struggles. Your money is our money now. You don't need it. Not like I do. It's time to help your actual family, not just pad some account statement." He took a large bite, chewing as he continued, listing my supposed comforts like grievances. The quiet of the house, which he called isolation. The book club, a frivolity. The annual trip to see my sister, a waste of funds better spent on his business venture. Each point was delivered with the certainty of a prosecutor. I did not interrupt. I listened. I placed my fork down and rested my hands in my lap out of sight. My fingers traced the linen of the napkin. The texture was familiar, solid. For 30 years, I had worked in the school library. I knew how to wait. I knew how to let a storm of noise exhaust itself until only the essential facts remained. His words were a storm. The fact was the theft he was proposing, wrapped in the language of family duty. He finished his list and took a long drink of water, watching me. He expected tears. He expected an argument. He expected the gentle, yielding mother who had always found a way to say yes, even when it meant her own plans went into a drawer. I felt a strange calm settle over me. It was cold and clear, like glass. All the heat of the moment, the sharp pain behind my ribs, condensed into this one, solid feeling. I looked at my son, at the entitled expectation on his face, and I knew something had just broken. Not loudly, not with a crash, but with the silent, final snap of a thread worn too thin. I smiled. It was not a big smile. It was a small, soft curving of my lips. The kind of smile I used to give him when he was small and had done something mischievous but ultimately harmless. A patient, knowing smile. He saw it. He misinterpreted it entirely. He saw submission. He saw the old Opal returning, ready to accommodate, to soothe, to give. "See," he said, his voice losing its edge, becoming almost jovial. "You get it. It's just practical. We'll get the paperwork started next week. I know a guy who can fast-track a reverse mortgage. We'll get you into a nice little apartment, too, something more manageable." "An apartment," I said, my voice still quiet. "Yeah, this place is too much for you. The stairs, the yard, you'll be happier. And the equity will free up capital. It's a win-win." I nodded slowly, as if considering. A win-win. The rest of the dinner passed with him outlining his plans. The new car he would get. The debt he would clear. The vacation he and his friends had been wanting to take. He spoke of asterisk, we asterisk, and us asterisk, but the pronouns only applied to him and his desires. I was not a person in this we asterisk. I was a resource. I cleared the plates. He did not offer to help. He sat at the table, scrolling through his phone, already spending the money he had just claimed. At the door, he hugged me. It was a brief, perfunctory squeeze. "Love you, Mom. Thanks for understanding. You'll see. This is for the best." "Good night, Marcus," I said. I closed the door and turned the deadbolt. The sound was precise. I walked back to the dining room. The air still held the scent of pot roast and his cologne. I stood there, looking at the two empty places at the table. The good china, now smudged with grease and gravy. I picked up my napkin. The linen was crumpled. I began to fold it again, my movements methodical, corner to corner, edge to edge, until it was a tight, flat square. I placed it in the center of my empty plate. The house was very quiet. I could hear the hum of the refrigerator, the tick of the hall clock. I walked to the living room, where framed photographs covered the walls. There was Marcus at graduation, smiling. Marcus as a child on my hip. Marcus with his father, who had died too young, leaving me with a boy to raise and a fear of instability so profound it shaped every financial choice I ever made. I had built this stability, this security, brick by careful brick, for us, so he would never know the fear I knew, so he would have a foundation. He saw the foundation now, and wanted to sell the bricks. I did not feel angry in that moment. The anger was there, but it was deep, buried under layers of colder material. What I felt was a profound, almost surgical clarity. He had drawn a line. He had stated his position. He believed my purpose was to fund his life until I was emptied out. I turned from the photographs and walked to my small home office. I did not turn on the main light. The glow from the street lamp outside was enough. I sat in my old leather chair. The desk was tidy, a habit from my library days. I opened the top drawer. Inside was a simple black ledger. I had kept it for years, a private record, not just of dollars and cents, but of choices. School trip paid, new tires for his car, down payment assistance. And on the other side, trip to Savannah deferred, new reading glasses deferred, patio furniture deferred. I ran my finger down the columns. The story of my life was in these numbers, a story of choosing him. I closed the ledger. I looked out the window at the dark, quiet street, my house. He thought my smile tonight was surrender. It was not. It was a door closing. It was the quiet click of a lock engaging. He had just handed me the key to my own freedom, and he was too blind with greed to see it. The plan did not form in a flash. It unspooled, calm and inevitable, like a measured length of silk. First this, then that, a sequence of logical, quiet steps. It began with a decision made there in the dark. I would not fight him. I would not scream. I would simply remove the thing he thought he could claim. I would become a ghost in the machine of his expectations. I sat for a long time. When I finally rose, my body felt both weary and lighter. I had a direction. The path was cold and clear ahead. The mother who said yes had stayed at that dinner table. The woman walking down the hall to her bedroom was someone new. She was someone who had just remembered she had her own name, and it was not Mom Asterisk. It was Opal, and Opal was done. Sleep did not come. It was not that I was restless. My body was still, my breathing even. But my mind was awake in a new way. It was not racing with worry or heating with anger. It was operating, cool and precise, like the mechanism of a reliable watch. The decision in the dark office had been the first tick. Now the gears began to turn. I rose from my bed. The digital clock on the nightstand read 12:17 a.m. I put on my robe and slippers and walked back down the hall. The house felt different at night, more mine than ever. The shadows belonged to me. The silence was a companion. In my office, I turned on the brass desk lamp. It cast a warm, focused pool of light on the polished wood, leaving the rest of the room in soft darkness. I sat down. The first order of business was not emotion. It was inventory. I logged into my banking portal. The password was a string of numbers and letters I had memorized. The screen glowed. I reviewed the accounts one by one. The checking account for bills, the savings account, my emergency buffer, the money market account, the IRA, the balance of the mortgage on the house. I knew these numbers, but I examined them now with a new purpose. Not as a safeguard for us asterisk, but as resources for asterisk me asterisk. I opened a fresh, blank spreadsheet. I began to list every asset, every liability. I noted account numbers, institutions, passwords stored in my physical book. I was methodical. This was what I had done for 30 years in the library, cataloging, sorting, creating order from potential chaos. As I worked, my eyes drifted to the small photograph on the corner of my desk. It was Marcus at 7, missing his 2 front teeth, holding up a tadpole in a jar. His father had taken that picture. I remembered the day, sunny by the creek behind our old apartment. The joy on his face was absolute. Where did that boy go? The question was clinical now, not a wail of grief, but a point of data in my assessment. The entitled man at my dinner table was not born, he was constructed. Piece by piece, concession by concession, I had handed him the tools. I opened the bottom drawer of my desk. Here I kept the important papers in a fireproof box, the deed to the house, the title to my car, my late husband David's life insurance policy, long ago absorbed into savings, my will. I lifted out the will, a document I had not looked at in nearly a decade. I read it under the lamplight. It left everything to Marcus. Of course it did. I was his mother. He was my only child. It was the natural order of things, the ultimate, final concession. I placed the document on the desk. It was no longer valid. It was a relic of the person I had been hours ago. The finality of that thought was bracing, like cold water. I needed a new executor, someone with clarity who understood the law and who would follow my instructions without sentimental deviation. The name came immediately, Alina Reed. We had been friends since college. She had built a successful estate law practice. She was discreet, fiercely ethical, and had never approved of Marcus's growing sense of entitlement. Last Christmas, over eggnog, she had said, "Opal, you've built a beautiful life. Don't let anyone bulldoze it, not even family." I had smiled and changed the subject. Now, her words returned to me with the weight of prophecy. I drafted an email to her. It was brief and unambiguous. "Alina, I need to make significant and urgent changes to my estate plan. I require a new will, a living trust, and to discuss granting you limited power of attorney for financial matters. I am available first thing tomorrow. This is non-negotiable and private. Opal." I sent it. The whoosh sound of the sent message was the second tick of the watch. Next, I considered the house. Marcus saw it as an asset to liquefy. I saw it as a trap. The stairs asterisk were becoming a consideration. The yard was asterisk a constant demand. But more than that, it was a museum of my old life. Every room held a ghost of a version of me that no longer existed. The young widow in the kitchen, the anxious mother in the hallway, the tired librarian in the living room. To stay here was to remain amongst those ghosts, vulnerable to his constant pressure. I needed a new space. A clean, small, manageable space that belonged only to the woman I was becoming. A place with no memories for him to weaponize. I thought of Keisha, my niece, a social worker, practical, compassionate, with a clear moral compass. She had never asked me for anything. She had only ever offered. She lived in a modern apartment complex near the community college. She often spoke of a 55-plus community being built a few miles from her, designed for active, independent living. "You'd love it, Aunt Opal. Quiet, safe, everything on one level. A pool, even." At the time, I had dismissed it. I wasn't ready to be that age. Now, the description sounded like a fortress. It was now 2:48 a.m. The world outside was utterly still. I was not tired. A steady, clear energy moved through me. I opened a new browser tab and found the website for the community, the Cedars. I browsed the floor plans. I studied the amenities. I noted the contact number and the address. I would call in the morning, but first I needed to understand my cash flow. I opened my budget file. I listed my monthly pension, my social security payment. I subtracted my current monthly expenses, mortgage, utilities, insurance, groceries. Then I calculated the same for a one-bedroom apartment at the Cedars. Rent, utilities, a simplified lifestyle. The numbers were clear. Without the burden of the house, I would have more discretionary income, not less. The equity, once freed, would be substantial, but it would not be liquid. It would be safe. Safe from him. That was the core of the plan. Not to spend the money, but to place it permanently beyond his reach. To transform it from a temptation into a monument to my autonomy. I leaned back in my chair. The initial outline was complete. Legal changes, physical relocation, financial restructuring, 3 pillars each supporting the other. A simple, elegant structure. A wave of something then, not sadness, but a profound recognition, passed through me. This was the ledger of my life, but I was no longer just recording entries. I was auditing. I was closing the books on one long, draining account and opening a new one. The entries would be different. They would be for me. I looked at the photograph of the boy with the tadpole again. I felt a distance from him, from that memory that was both peaceful and severe. I was not erasing him. I was simply, finally, drawing a boundary around myself. The mother love was still there, a deep, stained pool within me, but I would not let him drink from it until he learned to respect the well. I saved all my documents. I closed the laptop. The room was once again just a room in a quiet house. I turned off the lamp. In the sudden darkness, the afterimage of the screen floated before my eyes, a phantom of numbers and plans. I walked to the kitchen and poured a glass of water. I drank it looking out the window at the black silhouette of the maple tree in my backyard. I thought of nothing. I simply existed in the quiet and the dark, a calm center in the impending storm I was about to create. Tomorrow I would begin. Tonight I was just a woman in her kitchen, tasting the clean, cool water, feeling the solid floor beneath her feet. The rage was so deep it had become a kind of fuel, odorless and colorless, powering a silent engine. The grief was a settled sediment at the bottom of my heart. I would not stir it up. I rinsed the glass and placed it in the drainer. I went back to bed. This time, when I closed my eyes, sleep came. It was dreamless and deep. When I awoke at 6, the first thing I felt was not dread, but resolve. It was a concrete thing inside my chest. I got up, showered, and dressed with care. I made coffee. I waited for the world to begin so I could start taking it apart and putting it back together in a new shape, my own. At 9 o'clock precisely, I pulled open the heavy oak door of Reed and Associates. The reception area was quiet, paneled in dark wood, smelling of lemon polish and old paper. It was a place of order, exactly what I needed. Aliner's assistant, a young man with efficient glasses, nodded. "Ms. Reed is expecting you, Ms. Jenkins. You can go right in." Aliner's office was large, with a wide window overlooking a small city park. Her desk was a fortress of organized stacks. She stood as I entered, her expression professional but her eyes sharp with concern. She came around the desk and gave me a brief, firm hug. It was not her usual greeting. It told me she had understood the subtext of my email. "Opal, sit, coffee." "No, thank you." She returned to her chair, lacing her fingers together on the desk. "Your message said non-negotiable and private. Those are serious words from you. Tell me." I did not soften it. "Marcus demanded I turn over my finances to him. He called my savings our money. He said my careful life is hoarding, and my purpose now is to fund his. He wants to reverse mortgage the house and move me into an apartment." My voice was flat, reciting facts. Aliner's face did not change, but a muscle in her jaw tightened. She gave a slow, single nod. "I see, and your response?" I smiled. At that, a faint, grim smile touched her own lips. "I see that too. So, you are not here to discuss how to give him what he wants. You are here to discuss how to make it impossible." "Yes." "Good. She opened a drawer and pulled out a fresh legal pad. We will proceed on that basis. You understand this will likely sever your relationship with him. The relationship I have with him is already severed. He did the cutting. I'm just cleaning up the wound so it can heal properly. On my terms. Elinor made a note. Understood. Let's begin. First, your will. You wish to disinherit him. I paused. The word was so final. Not entirely, not from everything, but from the bulk, the liquidity. I want the assets placed into an irrevocable living trust. You will be the trustee. She looked up. That's a significant responsibility. It means you relinquish control of the principal. You can receive disbursements as the beneficiary, but you cannot unilaterally dismantle it. And as trustee, I would be legally bound to follow the trust instructions, not any future requests from you or especially from him. That is what I want. A wall between the money and his hands. A wall even I cannot tear down on a sentimental day. And the beneficiary upon your death. I had thought about this in the clear light of the morning. The trust will dissolve. 50% to establish a scholarship fund at Jefferson High for students pursuing library sciences. In David's name. The remaining 50% to be split between the local community center and my niece, Keisha Johnson. Elinor wrote swiftly. Removing Marcus entirely is a strong statement. It will hold up in court, given his age and lack of dependency, but he may contest it. Let him try. He will be contesting you, not his emotional mother. I believe that will be a different battle. It will, Elinor said, a note of steel in her voice. Next, you mentioned power of attorney. Limited, for financial matters only, effective immediately. I want you to have the authority to act on my behalf with all my accounts. I will provide a full list. I want to be able to say, truthfully, that I no longer have sole control. That gives me the power to move your money, pay your bills, sell your assets. I trust you. You should, but understand the scope. This is you handing me the keys to your financial life. I need to know the keys are in a safe he cannot pick. I took a folder from my bag and slid it across the desk. This is the inventory. Every account, every policy, the deed, the titles. The online banking credentials are on the separate sheet. Elinor did not open it immediately. She looked at me. This is a surgical strike, Opal. It's calm, it's legal, and it's absolute. Are you at peace with it? I considered the question. Peace was not the right word. I was resolute. I am certain. That is better than peace. Peace can be shaken. Certainty cannot. She nodded again, a lawyer satisfied with her client's clarity. Then we will draft 3 documents today. A new will, the irrevocable trust agreement, the limited power of attorney. My notary will witness your signatures. I can have them ready by 3 o'clock. What about the house? We can transfer the deed into the trust. It will require filing with the county. It will make the asset part of the trust corpus, inaccessible to him. Do you plan to sell? I plan to move to a smaller place. The proceeds from the sale of the house will go into the trust. Wise, simplify, and secure. She made more notes. You should also consider a new private bank account for your monthly income, an account he has never heard of. We'll set that up now, linked for your pension and Social Security direct deposits. Your existing accounts can be gradually consolidated and moved into the trust's management. For the next 2 hours, we worked. She asked precise questions. I gave precise answers. There was no discussion of Marcus's character, no rehashing of the painful dinner. This was not about emotion. It was about architecture. We were building a legal structure, room by room, with doors that locked from the inside. At one point, she said, he may accuse me of manipulating you, of exploiting an elderly client. I met her gaze. I am of sound mind. We have a decades-long friendship, but you are billing me for this time. The documentation will be meticulous. My decision is my own. Let him accuse. The facts will be there. By 3:30, the documents were before me, flagged with yellow tabs where I needed to sign. The notary, a solemn woman, witnessed each signature. The pen felt heavy, but my hand was steady. Each flourish of my name was a brick laid in my new wall. When it was done, Elinor gathered the documents. The trust is now active. The power of attorney is effective. I will begin the process of red-idling the accounts. What is your next step? I am going to look at an apartment. Then, I am going home to wait. Wait for what? For him to come back. He will. He'll want to talk about our plans. I need to let him talk. I need him to commit to his narrative completely, so the silence that follows is entirely his to comprehend. Elinor stood and came around the desk. This time, she didn't hug me. She placed a hand on my shoulder. He won't know what hit him. That's the point, I said. It shouldn't feel like a hit. It should feel like the ground disappearing from beneath his feet. A natural consequence, not a battle. I left her office, the signed copies of my new life secure in my bag. The afternoon sun was bright. I felt no thrill, no surge of victory. I felt the clean, quiet satisfaction of a complicated task properly planned and now set in motion. The law was my instrument. Elinor was my ally. The rest was just mechanics and waiting. I got into my car, the familiar fabric of the seat warm from the sun. I did not drive home immediately. I sat for a moment, watching people walk through the park. Ordinary people on ordinary days. My day was no longer ordinary. I had just legally dismantled the future my son had assumed was his. I started the engine. The sound was dependable. I pulled into traffic, heading not toward the past, but toward the new foundation I had just begun to build. The parking lot of the Cedars was newly paved, the lines bright white. The buildings were low, 2 stories, with wide windows and wooden trim painted a quiet gray. There were flower beds with mulch, not yet planted for the season. It looked clean and quiet. I parked beside Keisha's sensible hatchback. She got out, her face a mixture of concern and readiness. She wore practical trousers and a cardigan. "Aunt Opal," she said, giving me a careful hug. "When you called, you said it was time for a change. Are you okay?" "I am making a change," I said. "That is the definition of okay. Thank you for meeting me." She searched my face for a moment, then nodded. "All right, the leasing office is this way. I made an appointment with Laura." The lobby was airy, with a tile floor and a large ceiling fan turning slowly. A few residents sat in armchairs, reading newspapers or chatting softly. It felt like a library, not a hospital. Laura, a woman about Keisha's age with a friendly but professional manner, greeted us. "You must be Opal. Keisha has told me so much about your career. We're delighted to have you consider us." She led us down a carpeted hallway. "We have 2 one-bedroom units available. One faces the courtyard, one faces the walking path. Both have the same layout." She stopped at door 112 and used a master key. The door swung open. Light flooded the space. The walls were a plain off-white. The floor was a neutral vinyl plank. The room was empty, and the emptiness was its most compelling feature. It was a blank rectangle of potential. I walked in. The living room was square, with a large window. The kitchenette was to the right, with laminate counters, a stove, a refrigerator, and empty cabinets. A small pass-through connected it to the living area. A short hallway led to a bedroom just large enough for a bed and dresser, and a bathroom with a walk-in shower and grab bars neatly integrated into the walls. "It's smaller than your house," Keisha said quietly, standing beside me. "It is the correct size," I said. I walked to the window. The view was of a small, manicured courtyard with a bench and a bird feeder. It was contained, private, manageable. I tested the faucet in the kitchen. The water ran clear. I opened and closed the cabinets. They were clean and smelled of fresh wood. "What are the monthly fees?" I asked Laura. She listed them: rent, which included water, trash, and groundskeeping, optional cable and internet packages, a separate electricity bill. She mentioned the community amenities: the laundry room on each floor, the communal lounge with a library, the swimming pool, the schedule of activities. Bingo, book club, water aerobics. It was all so simple. A life reduced to its essentials, with the option for company if I chose it. No lawn to mow, no gutters to clean, no memories in every corner. "Can you tell me about the lease terms?" I asked. "We offer month-to-month or a 1-year lease. The security deposit is equal to 1 month's rent. We do a background and credit check, but given your situation, I'm sure that's just a formality." I would like the 1-year lease, I said. For this unit, the one facing the courtyard. Keisha looked at me, her eyebrows raised slightly. Aunt Opal, you don't want to see the other one, or think about it. I have thought about it, I said. This is sufficient, it is quiet, it has good light, the shower is safe, that is all I require. Laura smiled. Wonderful. We can complete the application now if you're ready. I'll need some information and the deposit to hold it. We followed her back to the office. I provided my details, my name, social security number, my pension as income. I wrote a check for the deposit from the new private checking account Alina had helped me open. The check did not have my home address on it. It felt like using a new name. While Laura processed the papers, Keisha and I sat in the waiting area. Keisha leaned closer, her voice low. Is this because of Marcus? I looked at her. She had always been perceptive. It is because of me, I said. His actions were the catalyst. My decision is my own. He came by my office last week, she said carefully. He was talking about streamlining your life. He made it sound like he was doing you a favor. I'm sure he believes that. You're not going along with it, though, are you? There was no judgment in her voice, only a need to understand. No, Keisha, I'm not going along with it. I am going around it. She was silent for a moment, watching me. Then she nodded, a firm, definitive motion. Good, what do you need me to do? Her immediate offer of help, without conditions, was a balm I had not known I needed. I may need help moving a few things, just the essentials, and your discretion. For now, that is all. You have it. Laura returned with a stack of papers. I signed the lease agreement, my signature identical to the one I had placed on the legal documents hours earlier. She handed me 2 keys on a simple ring. Welcome to the Cedars, Opal. Move-in can be any time after the 1st of the month. That's in 5 days. Here are your keys. The deposit holds it exclusively for you. I took the keys. They were cold and solid in my palm. The metal teeth caught the light. Thank you. Outside, standing by our cars, Keisha hugged me again, longer this time. Call me for anything, day or night. I will, thank you, Keisha. I got into my car and placed the keys on the passenger seat. I did not drive away immediately. I looked at the building, at the window of Unit 112. It was just a window, but behind it was a room that held no history of disappointment. It was a clean space, my space. The act of securing it felt more significant than signing the trust documents. The law was abstract. This was physical. This was where I would wake up, where I would make my coffee, where I would exist, separate from the narrative of sacrifice he had written for me. I thought of my house, filled with the furniture of a family, the photos of a past life. I would take very little: my bed, my favorite chair, a few boxes of books and kitchenware. The rest could stay or be sold or be given away. It was just stuff. The weight of it was an anchor I no longer needed. I started the car. The keys on the seat jingled softly with the motion. That sound, the faint promise of a lock turning, was the sound of my next step. I had a legal fortress. Now I had a physical retreat. The architecture of my escape was nearly complete. I drove toward home, but the word home was already shifting its meaning. It was no longer the house on Elm Street. Home was becoming a quieter concept, located somewhere behind my ribs in the newfound certainty. And soon, it would also be a quiet, sunlit room with a lock on the door that only I controlled. The keys to the apartment stayed in the bottom of my handbag, a quiet secret. Life resumed its outward normalcy. I tended my garden. I went to the grocery store. I paid bills from the new account, the statements for which would go to a post office box Alina had helped me secure. I was a ghost in my own life, preparing to depart. 2 evenings after I signed the lease, Marcus's car pulled into the driveway. I saw it from the kitchen window. It was a calculated visit. He would want to check in, to solidify his plans while I was still compliant from the last dinner. I put the kettle on. He came in without knocking, calling out, "Mom, you here?" as if the house could be empty. On the porch, I called back. I made tea. He appeared in the doorway, loosening his tie. He looked pleased with himself, energized. Perfect. It's nice out. We can talk. I carried 2 mugs out to the porch swing. The evening was cool, the sky streaked with orange and purple. We sat side by side, the swing creaking gently. He took a sip of tea, made a face, it was plain, no sugar, and set it on the small table beside him. "So I've made some calls," he began, not looking at me, looking out at the yard as if surveying an estate. "About the house. I found a guy, a real shark, who can get us top dollar fast. He says given the market, we could list it as is and still clear a huge chunk." "As is?" I asked, my voice mild. "Yeah, I mean, we're not going to pour money into new carpet or paint. That's for the next owner. We take the cash and run." He finally glanced at me. "You'll love the apartment I found, over near the new shopping plaza. Gym, pool, all that. A little more modern than this place." I nodded slowly. "I see, and the money from the house, after the mortgage is paid." He leaned back, spreading an arm along the back of the swing. "That's the beauty part. The reverse mortgage guy says we can structure it so you get a monthly income from the equity, and I get a lump sum up front to clear my debts and invest. It's a win-win. You get a steady check, I get a fresh start." "You've spoken to a reverse mortgage specialist?" "Last week. He's ready to go. We just need you to sign the papers." He said it so casually, as if discussing a magazine subscription. "And my other accounts, the savings, the IRA." He waved a hand. "We'll roll those into a managed fund. Safer that way, more growth potential. I have a financial advisor friend. He'll take a small fee, but it's worth it for professional management. You shouldn't have to worry about any of this." I took a sip of my tea. It was the perfect temperature. "It sounds very organized. You've put a lot of thought into this for me." "Well, someone has to," he said, a note of familiar exasperation entering his voice. "You're not getting any younger, Mom. You need to enjoy your golden years, not fret over statements. Let me handle the stress. That's what a son is for." The irony was so thick it was almost a taste in the air. I let it hang there. I asked more gentle questions. I let him paint the entire picture. The new car he would buy, the vacation to Cabo, the investment property he was eyeing. Each detail was another brushstroke on the canvas of his future, a future built squarely on the foundation of my past. He spoke for 20 minutes. I listened. I nodded. I said, "I see," and that sounds efficient. I gave him no resistance. I offered no alternative. I was the blank page upon which he was writing his victory. Finally, he ran out of plans to describe. He looked at me, expectant, waiting for the gratitude, the relief. "You are very thorough, Marcus," I said. "You have a vision." He smiled, a broad, satisfied smile. "I do. It's going to be great. You'll be so much happier, less to worry about." "Yes," I agreed. "Less to worry about." He checked his watch, an expensive one, I noted, that he could not afford. "I should run. Big meeting tomorrow. I'll call you in a couple days to set up the appointments with the realtors and the mortgage guy, okay?" "That's fine." We both stood. He hesitated for a second, then pulled me into a hug. It was less perfunctory than the last one. It was the hug of a man who believes he has won. "Love you, Mom. Thanks for being on board. I knew you'd see reason." I held the hug a moment longer than he expected. My arms around him felt like they were saying goodbye to the idea of him, to the son I had hoped he would become. I felt the solidity of his shoulders, the faint scent of his cologne. I memorized it. Then I released him. "Good night, Marcus. Drive safely." He bounded down the porch steps, a man with a plan, his keys jingling. He gave a final wave before getting into his car and backing out of the driveway. The red taillights disappeared around the corner. I sat back down on the swing. The sky was dark now. The first stars were out. The quiet of the evening settled around me, deeper than before. He had committed fully. He had laid out every detail of his intended takeover. He had confirmed everything I suspected and more. There was no ambiguity left, no room for a sympathetic interpretation. He saw me as a resource to be managed and depleted, a problem of sentiment to be solved with paperwork. The last thread of maternal doubt, the one that whispered maybe he doesn't understand, maybe he's just scared, snapped. It fell away silently. I finished my tea, now cold. The The calm inside me was absolute. It was the calm of a surgeon after the diagnosis is confirmed and the course of action is clear. There was no anger in it. There was only procedure. I went inside, locking the door behind me. The house felt like a stage set after the actors have left. The performance was over. He had played his part perfectly. Now it was time for the final act, the one he hadn't read. I washed the 2 mugs, dried them, and put them away. Every movement was deliberate. I was storing the old life away, piece by piece. Tomorrow, the real work would begin. But for tonight, I had all the confirmation I needed. The patient was terminal. The operation was necessary, and I was ready to perform it. The house was silent, a vessel holding its breath. I went to my office and turned on the computer. The blue glow of the monitor was the only light in the room. It was time. I logged into the first banking portal. My hands were steady. The username and password were muscle memory. The dashboard appeared, displaying the checking account balance, a modest sum for monthly bills. I initiated a transfer. I entered the account number for the trust's main holding account, which a leaner had provided. I typed the amount, all of it saved for $100. I needed the account to remain open but empty. I clicked Review. I confirmed. The transaction processed. A confirmation number appeared on the screen. I wrote it down in a small notebook next to the corresponding account. I repeated the process for the savings account. A larger sum, the result of decades of putting aside a little from each paycheck. Transfer. Account number, all of it. Confirm. Another number noted. The money market account. The brokerage account with the IRA. One by one, I navigated to each institution's website. Each login was a step through a familiar door into a room I was now stripping bare. I did not hurry. I was meticulous. I double-checked every routing and account number. I recorded every confirmation code. The silence was broken only by the tap of the keys and the occasional click of the mouse. There was a joint savings account. It had been opened when Marcus was a teenager for college expenses. His name was still on it. I had never removed it. He had forgotten it existed. It held a little over $3,000, money I had let accumulate from birthday gifts and minor deposits over the years. I logged into this one last. I transferred every cent to the trust. I did not leave $100 here. I zeroed it out completely. When the last transfer was confirmed, I leaned back. My shoulders were tense, but my mind was clear. I had just moved the totality of my liquid assets into an entity he could not touch. The house's equity was already being processed into the trust's name by a leaner's firm. My car was in my name alone. Everything of substance was now behind a legal wall. I opened a new tab and logged into the trust's online portal, using credentials a leaner had given me. I refreshed the page. The balances from my various transfers began to populate, appearing as pending deposits. The numbers were all there, consolidated, safe. I closed all the browser windows. I cleared the history and cache, a habit from the library computers. Then I shut down the computer. The fan whirred and fell silent. The screen went black. The next phase was physical. I went to my bedroom and took the large suitcase from the top of the closet. I laid it open on the bed. I did not pack with sentiment. I packed with necessity. I chose clothing, comfortable trousers, blouses, sweaters, undergarments, a pair of sturdy shoes and my house slippers, my winter coat. I packed my toiletries from the bathroom, my medications enough for a month. From my office, I took the fireproof box with my essential documents, passport, birth certificate, social security card, the new will and trust papers, the apartment lease. I added my laptop and its charger. Then and only then did I allow myself the luxury of memory. I went to the living room and stood before the wall of photographs. I selected 3. One of David and me on our wedding day, young and smiling with a future before us. One of Marcus as a toddler, sitting in a pile of autumn leaves. One of my sister and Keisha, taken last summer at a picnic. I removed them from their frames, the glass cool against my fingers. The frames I left on the wall empty. I placed the photographs flat in a folder and put the folder in the suitcase. I looked around. The house was still full of furniture, of books, of the detritus of a life, but it felt hollow already. These objects were ghosts. They held no power over me. I would arrange for movers to take my bed, my reading chair, a small kitchen table, and my books later. For now, the essentials were in the suitcase. I changed into night clothes and went through my normal routine. I brushed my teeth. I washed my face. I checked the locks on the doors. It felt like any other night, but it was not. I was a visitor in my own home for the last time. I slept, not deeply, but I slept. When I woke at dawn, I dressed in the clothes I had laid out. I made 1 cup of coffee in the kitchen and drank it standing at the counter. I washed the mug and put it away. I took the suitcase and rolled it to the front door. I left it there. On the dining room table, which still held the echo of his demands, I placed a single sheet of plain white paper. On it, I wrote in my clear librarian's script. Marcus Asterisk. All financial matters are now under the management of attorney Alina Reed. You may contact her at 555 214 0997. Mother. I did not write love. I did not write an explanation. The note was a door closed, a direction given. I picked up my handbag, feeling the weight of the new apartment keys within it. I took one last look. The morning sun slanted through the windows, illuminating dust motes in the air. It was just a house. I felt no great pang, no wrenching sadness. I felt a clean severance. I opened the front door, pulled the suitcase over the threshold, and stepped outside. I locked the door behind me with my key. I did not look back. I put the suitcase in the trunk of my car, got in the driver's seat, and started the engine. The familiar route felt different. I was not running errands. I was relocating. I drove to the Cedars. The morning traffic was light. I arrived as the community was waking. A few people were out walking. I parked in the visitor's spot, took my suitcase from the trunk, and walked to the entrance of Building 1. At the door to 112, I used my key. The lock turned with a solid, satisfying click asterisk. I pushed the door open onto the empty, sun-filled space. I wheeled my suitcase inside and closed the door behind me. The silence here was new, unfilled with history. It was my silence. I placed my handbag on the clean kitchen counter. The sound was small and sharp in the empty room. I was here. The transfer was complete. The money was gone from his reach. I was gone from his reach. The plan was no longer a plan. It was my new reality. I stood in the center of the empty living room and breathed in the scent of new paint and possibility. There was nothing to do now but wait for the consequences to find him. My work was done. The first morning light in the new apartment was different. It fell in a clean, rectangular shape on the vinyl floor, unobstructed by curtains I had yet to hang. I woke at my usual time. The silence was not the deep, familiar silence of my house, but a lighter, emptier quiet. I got up and made coffee using the small travel brewer I had packed. The sound of the dripping seemed loud in the bare room. I drank it standing at the kitchen pass-through, looking at my suitcase still by the door. It was 7:15 a.m. I knew with a certainty that felt like fact what was happening elsewhere at that moment. Marcus would be awake. He would be in his own apartment, the one with the expensive view and the messy floors. He would be at his laptop, a second cup of coffee beside him, preparing for his day. He might be thinking of calling me later to finalize details. But first, a habit. He would log into his banking app, a ritual of checking his dwindling balances, of stoking his anxiety and his sense of entitlement. There was one account he sometimes checked, though he considered it insignificant. The old joint savings account. He had not contributed to it in 20 years, but he knew it was there. A small, forgotten pool of money. He had mentioned it once last year, joking that it could cover a car payment. I had said nothing then. At approximately 7:30 a.m., I imagined his fingers tapping on his keyboard. The login page, his username, his password, the loading screen, then the dashboard. The number would not be what he expected, not the low 4 figures he remembered. It would be a 0, a stark, definitive 0, a decimal point, maybe 2 zeros after it. 000. He would blink, refresh the page, clear his cache, log out and log back in. The 0 would remain. A pit would open in his stomach, a cold disbelief. He would navigate to the transaction history. He would see a single-line item from the night before, an electronic transfer out, the full amount, to an account he did not recognize. His mind would jump then to the other accounts. My asterisk accounts. the ones he considered his eventual safety net. He did not have the login credentials for those, but a sharp, sudden fear would lance through him. He would grab his phone. His thumb would find my number in his contacts. He would press call. My phone on the kitchen counter beside me remained silent. I had turned off the ringer. The screen lit up once, showing his name. It vibrated softly against the laminate. I watched it until it stopped. A voicemail notification appeared. I did not listen to it. He would call again, and again. After the third attempt, the panic would shift from confusion to a dawning, terrible understanding. This was not a glitch. This was action. He would dress quickly, his movements frantic. He would drive to my house. The trip would take 20 minutes with traffic. He would speed. I finished my coffee and rinsed the cup. I unpacked my suitcase, hanging clothes in the empty closet, placing toiletries in the bathroom. The ordinary actions were a balm. Each settled item was a claim on this new space. At 8:20 a.m., I pictured his car screeching into my driveway. He would run to the front door. It would be locked. He would use his key, the key he had for emergencies, and burst in. "Mom, Mom." His voice would echo in the rooms. He would check the kitchen, the living room, my bedroom. He would see the emptiness where my personal items had been. The gaps on the dresser, the empty space in the closet. The house would feel still and hollow, answering his shouts with silence. He would return to the living room, his breathing quick. His eyes would land on the dining table, the single sheet of white paper. He would snatch it up. I could see his face as he read the 2 lines, the blood draining from his cheeks, leaving a waxy pallor. His lips moving slightly as he reread the words. Attorney Alina Reed. A professional name. A legal name. Not an emotional plea, not an explanation. A direction to a lawyer. His hand would tighten, crumpling the edge of the paper. The note was a stone door sliding shut. He would fumble for his phone again. He would not call me this time. He would call the number on the paper. I sat in the single chair I had brought by the window. The sun was higher now, warming the room. I had no television, no radio. The quiet was complete. I knew Alina's protocol. She would not answer his first call. It would go to her voicemail, a professional greeting asking him to leave his name, number, and a brief message. He would stammer something out, his voice likely too loud, edged with panic and demand. "This is Marcus Jenkins, Opal Jenkins's son. I'm trying to reach her." "There's something wrong with her accounts. She's not answering. Call me back immediately." He would hang up. He would stand in the middle of my quiet house, surrounded by the furniture of a life that was no longer available to him. The reality would begin to seep in, cold and heavy. The money was gone. I was gone. The plans he had so confidently laid out on the porch swing were ashes. The win-win scenario was a null set. He might call Keisha then. I had prepared her. Her phone would ring. I did not need to imagine that conversation. I knew how it would go. Her voice, calm and firm, offering no comfort, no information. "I'm sure Aunt Opal is fine, Marcus. If she left a lawyer's number, you should contact the lawyer." He would rage. He would plead. He would get nothing from her. By 9:00 a.m., the first phase of the consequence would have fully landed. The shock would be transitioning into a scrambling, desperate energy. He would be in his car again, driving to his office or to a coffee shop, his mind churning with half-formed plans, threats, legal questions he could not answer. In my quiet apartment, I folded the clothes from my suitcase. I made a list of groceries I would need. I measured the window for curtains. The world continued, simple and orderly. The trap had been sprung miles away, and I felt no vibration from its closing, only a profound, quiet stillness. The revenge was not in the act of taking. It was in the waiting, and I was very good at waiting. I had waited my whole life for this moment, though I had not known its name until now. The phone on the counter did not ring again. He would have stood in the center of the living room for a long time, the crumpled note in his hand. Alina had not called back. His messages to me had gone unanswered. The silence of the house would have pressed in on him, a physical weight. He would have noticed more details then. The absence of my favorite throw pillow from the couch. The lack of my reading glasses on the side table. The house was not just quiet, it was staged. It was a shell. His next call, I knew, would be to Keisha. She told me about it later, her voice calm as she recounted it over tea in my new apartment. Her phone had rung mid-morning. She was at her desk at the community center. "Keisha," his voice was strained, too loud. "Have you heard from Mom? Have you talked to her?" "I spoke with her recently, yes," Keisha said. She did not offer when or why. "Where is she?" "I'm at the house. She's not here, her stuff is gone. There's a note about a lawyer." "Then you should contact the lawyer, Marcus. That's what the note says." "Don't give me that. Something's wrong. Her accounts, there's no money, everything's gone. I think someone's taken advantage of her. She's not in her right mind." He was trying on the story even as he said it, testing its fit. Keisha's tone did not change. "Aunt Opal is one of the most competent people I know. If she left a note directing you to her attorney, then I'm sure that's the appropriate path." "She's your aunt too. Aren't you worried? She could be in trouble. This Alina person could be manipulating her." "Alina Reed has been her friend for 40 years. She's a respected estate attorney. I'm not worried about manipulation. Are you?" Keisha let the question hang. He sputtered. "Of course I'm worried. This is my mother we're talking about, our family. We need to find her. You must know where she is." "I know she is safe. That's all you need to know. Call the attorney, Marcus." And she had ended the call. She told me she did it without raising her voice, a simple disconnection. He would have been left with the dial tone, the silence of the house, and the cold understanding that the allies he assumed he had were not on his side. Keisha's calm refusal would have been a second blow. Alina called him back at 11:07 a.m. She told me the timing was deliberate. She wanted him to have sat with his panic for a while. She wanted his thoughts to race down every dead-end path before she provided the facts. "Marcus Jenkins, this is Alina Reed returning your call." Her voice, she said, was professionally neutral, the voice of a judge reading a docket. "Finally, what is going on? Where is my mother? What have you done with her money?" His words would have tumbled out, accusatory, fearful. "Your mother is in good health and is secure. She has retained me to manage her legal and financial affairs. As of yesterday, she executed a durable power of attorney granting me authority over her accounts. She has also placed the majority of her assets into an irrevocable living trust, of which I am the trustee." There would have been a pause on the line. I imagine him trying to process the legal terms, cutting through to the core meaning. "What does that mean? Where is the money?" "The funds have been transferred to the trust. The trust is a separate legal entity. The assets are no longer your mother's personal property to dispense. They are managed according to the trust agreement." "That's her money, our money. You can't just steal it." "There has been no theft, Mr. Jenkins. These were your mother's deliberate, legally sound actions, taken while she is of sound mind. I have the documentation, including medical assessment if required. The trust is irrevocable. She cannot alter it. I cannot alter it for her. Its purpose is to provide for her care and upon her passing, to disperse to the beneficiaries she has named." Another pause, longer. The word beneficiaries would have landed like a stone. "Beneficiaries? I'm her son, I'm her beneficiary." "You are not a named beneficiary of the Opal Jenkins Living Trust. The beneficiaries are a scholarship fund, a community organization, and her niece, Keisha Johnson." The silence then would have been absolute. I can picture him sitting on my couch, the phone pressed to his ear, the world narrowing to that single sentence. He was erased. Legally, financially, he was made a non-entity. She can't do that." His voice would have been smaller, stripped of its bluster. "She has done it. The documents are executed and filed. The transfers are complete. The house deed is being transferred into the trust as we speak. Your mother's monthly income is being direct deposited into a private account for her living expenses. The structure is airtight." "I'll contest it. I'll get a lawyer. I'll say you coerced her." "You are welcome to try. I have video of her signing, affirming her understanding and her lack of coercion. I have a sworn affidavit from her physician regarding her mental competence. You would be wasting your money, which, I understand, is currently a pressing concern for you." Alina's delivery would have been clean, surgical. "My advice, as an officer of the court, is to accept the situation. Your mother has chosen to secure her future. You should focus on securing your own." She told me he said nothing for a full 10 seconds. Then the line went dead. He had hung up. He would have remained in my house, surrounded by the furniture of a life that was no longer his to inherit. The reality was now complete and inescapable. The money was gone. I was gone. His safety net had been deliberately and permanently cut away. The confrontation was not with me, or with Keisha, or even with Alina. It was with the consequences of his own words, his own sense of entitlement, which had now materialized into a legal fortress he could not breach. The storm had passed. What was left was the devastating quiet after the wind dies, when the damage is all that remains, visible and stark under a clear sky. He was alone in that quiet. I was not there to witness it, but I did not need to be. I had built the room. Now he had to sit in it. The morning in my apartment held a quality of peace I had not known was possible. It was not the absence of sound, but the presence of a deep, internal quiet. The sun through the uncurtained window was simply light, not a reminder of chores left undone. I made coffee. I ate toast with jam at the small table I had bought, which now stood by the window. At 10 a.m., I walked to the community center attached to the Cedars. A sign in the lobby announced a class, Introduction to Watercolor. It was starting in 15 minutes. I had not painted since I was a girl. I signed my name on the clipboard. The instructor, a woman about my age with kind eyes, handed me a tray with basic supplies, a brush, a small palette of colors, a cup of water, and a sheet of thick paper. There were 10 of us around a large table. We were given a simple task, paint a bowl of fruit placed in the center. I mixed the colors with care. The red for the apple was not quite right, so I added a touch of brown. The green of the pear needed more yellow. My hand was not steady, and the shapes were soft, blurring at the edges. It did not matter. The process required my full attention, a focus that pushed all other thoughts to the edges of my mind. For 90 minutes, I thought only of color and form, of water on paper. The woman next to me leaned over. "Yours has such a gentle feel to it," she said quietly. "Thank you," I said. "It's my first time." "Mine too. It's nice, isn't it? To learn something new." "Yes, it is." That was the entire conversation. It was sufficient. After the class, I cleaned my brush, returned the tray, and walked back to my apartment. The quiet inside welcomed me. I placed my amateurish painting on the kitchen counter to dry. It was a record of a calm morning, nothing more. Later, I sat in my chair by the window with a book. The words entered my mind easily, without the undercurrent of static that had been my constant companion for years. The low-grade worry about Marcus, about money, about being enough. That static was gone. In its place was a clean, clear frequency. This was my revenge. Not a shout, but this silence. Not a blow, but this unclenching. As I read, the afternoon waned. I did not think of him, but I knew with a detached certainty where he was. He would have left my house eventually. He would have driven somewhere, but not home. He would be sitting in his car, parked somewhere familiar, trying to comprehend the empty space where his future was supposed to be. The leather seat of his BMW was cold. He had been driving aimlessly for an hour after leaving the house, after the call with Alina. His mind could not settle on a single thought. They all collided and fragmented. Irrevocable trust, not a beneficiary, power of attorney. Legal phrases that translated to one thing: no. He found himself turning onto Elm Street. He parked across from the house, several doors down, under the shade of a large oak. He turned off the engine. The street was quiet in the late afternoon. A neighbor watered flowers. A dog walked by with its owner. He looked at the house. It looked the same as it always had. The gray siding, the green shutters, the maple tree in the front yard. But it was no longer his mother's house. It was an asset of the Opal Jenkins Living Trust. The words were absurd. He felt a hollow laugh bubble up in his chest and die. He thought of the dinner, her soft smile. He had mistaken it for surrender. It had been a seal. He thought of the porch talk, his grand plans flowing so easily because he was speaking to a receptive audience, or so he believed. She had been studying him, taking his measure, letting him convict himself with his own words. He picked up his phone. He pulled up my number. He pressed call. It rang 4 times and went to voicemail. My recorded voice, pleasant and generic, asked him to leave a message. He did not. He put the phone down. The full weight of it began to press down, not as panic, but as a crushing, sober realization. This was not a temporary setback. This was permanent. The money that had always existed in the background of his life, the final fallback, was gone. The mother who had always been there, a constant source of support he could tap, was gone. She had removed herself, not in anger, but in a calm, legal, administrative act. He thought of his debts, the car payment due next week, the credit card statements stacked on his desk, the boasts he had made to his friends about an upcoming investment. A cold sweat broke out on his forehead. He had no plan. His entire plan had been asterisk or asterisk. For the first time, perhaps in his entire adult life, he considered her not as a function, the provider, the listener, the safety net, but as a person. A person he had pushed to the edge of a decision with his demands. A person who had, quietly and finally, stepped away from the edge, leaving him to stare into the chasm alone. A profound loneliness engulfed him, sitting there in his expensive car, looking at the familiar house. It was a loneliness born of understanding. He had not lost an adversary. He had lost his foundation, and he had built nothing of his own to stand on. He rested his forehead against the steering wheel. He did not cry. He simply sat there, motionless, as the sky outside his windshield turned from blue to deep twilight purple. The interior of the car grew dark. The streetlights flickered on, casting long, skeletal shadows. He had reached the reckoning. It was not loud. It was the sound of his own breathing in a silent car, the hum of distant traffic, the knowledge that he was utterly and perhaps permanently alone. The consequences were no longer abstract. They were the empty seat beside him, the silent phone, the zero on the screen. They were the rest of his life, starting now. In my apartment, I made a simple dinner. I ate. I washed the dish. I looked at my watercolor, now dry, the colors softer than life. I felt no triumph. I felt a vast and gentle stillness. The parallel lines of our day had run their course, mine toward peace, his toward desolation. The balance was restored, but it was not the balance he had wanted. It was the balance I required. The quiet was complete. The next morning, I met Keisha for breakfast at a diner halfway between my apartment and her office. The sun was bright, streaming through the wide windows onto the checkered tablecloths. I arrived first. I ordered a coffee and watched the waitress fill the heavy ceramic mug. Keisha came in a few minutes later, scanning the room until she saw me. She smiled, a real smile that reached her eyes, and slid into the booth opposite me. "You look good, Aunt Opal," she said, unwinding her scarf. "I feel well," I said. It was true. The waitress came and we ordered. Eggs for me, pancakes for her. When the waitress left, Keisha leaned forward, her hands around her own coffee mug. "He called me again last night. Late." I nodded. I had expected this. He was different, not angry anymore, just confused, lost. He kept asking why, like he couldn't understand the sequence of events. She watched my face. I told him the sequence was simple. He made a demand, you made a decision. He didn't like my answer. "He is not used to consequences," I said. "He has had a lifetime of avoiding them. This one is too large to avoid. It is structural." Our food arrived. We ate for a few minutes in comfortable silence. The diner was bustling with the morning crowd, the clatter of plates a pleasant background noise. "Aliner says the trust is fully funded. The house sale is progressing. The money is secure." Keisha said this between bites, matter of fact. "Good. That was the objective." "And you're really okay. In the apartment. It's not too small." I looked out the window at the passing cars. "It is the correct size. It contains my life, not the ghost of someone else. There is a profound peace in that." She put her fork down. "What will you do now? I mean, beyond the painting class?" I had given this thought. "I will live. I will read. I may volunteer at the community center library. I will have lunch with Aliner. I will have dinner with you. I will be a person, not a function." I paused, stirring my coffee. "And I have been considering the trust's purpose, after I am gone." Keisha listened. "I would like the scholarship at Jefferson High to be specifically for students who want to become librarians or work in community outreach. In David's name. He always believed in the quiet work, the work that builds a foundation no one sees until they need it. Her eyes softened. He would have liked that, and the rest, you're sure. The community center needs a new roof. Your work with foster youth needs funding. These are tangible things. They are a legacy that does not depend on blood. It depends on merit and need. I met her gaze. You are my family, Keisha. Family is not a title one uses to make withdrawals. It is a choice to make deposits. You have chosen me. I choose you. She reached across the table and squeezed my hand. Her grip was warm and firm. I'm proud of you. I am proud of me too, I said, and the statement felt factual, not boastful. It took a long time to arrive here. We finished our breakfast. She paid the bill despite my protests. You can get the next one, she said, smiling. Outside, we hugged goodbye on the sidewalk. The morning air was crisp. Call me anytime, she said. I will. I watched her drive away. Then I got into my own car. I did not drive directly back to the Cedars. Instead, I drove past my old house. It was not a sentimental journey. It was an observation. A realtor's sign was staked in the front yard. The house looked the same, but it was now a commodity, a thing to be sold. There was no emotion attached to it. It was a structure. I continued driving. Back at my apartment, I unlocked the door. The space was still mostly empty, but my few belongings were placed where I wanted them. My chair by the window, my small table. The watercolor painting was propped on the kitchen counter. I would buy a frame for it. I sat in my chair. The sun had moved, warming a different patch of floor. I picked up my book but did not open it. I simply sat. There was no hatred in my heart for Marcus. There was a quiet sadness, a fossilized imprint of the love I had carried for the boy he was. But the man he became had made himself a stranger to me, and I had no obligation to strangers. My revenge was not his punishment. It was my liberation. His punishment was the natural consequence of his character, meeting the unyielding reality of my boundaries. They were separate things. The phone on the table remained silent. I did not expect it to ring. The line between my old life and my new one was now fully drawn, in ink and law and quiet resolve. I thought of the future, not with grand plans, but with a series of small certainties. A book to read, a class to attend, a meal to cook, the scholarship that would carry David's name forward, helping some quiet student who loved the order of shelves and the potential of stories. That was a good use for a life savings. It was a better legacy than financing a son's dissatisfaction. The revenge was complete. It had been executed not with fury, but with precision. Not with a shout, but with a series of deliberate, quiet actions. The victory was not in his loss, but in my peace. He had shouted that my money was our money. My silence had replied that my life was my own. I opened my book and began to read. The words were just words, the story just a story. But the act of reading for pleasure, in a chair I had chosen, in a room that was mine alone, was the final sentence of my own story's most important chapter. The rest would be an epilogue of contentment, written on my own terms in the quiet language of a self-possessed life. The sun moved across the floor. The room was still. I turned the page.